With his compassionate nature and innovative spirit, Hiccup has always been the heart of Berk's transformation from dragon hunters to dragon riders. But what if the goodness of his soul never shone through? What if fear, pride, and the desperate need for acceptance corrupted Hiccup? In this video, we'll explore 3 dark timelines where Hiccup becomes exactly what Stoic always wanted him to be, a bad Viking. In our first timeline, Hiccup still shoots down Toothless and tracks him to the forest clearing. However, when he finds the Night Fury tangled and helpless, instead of cutting him free, a different thought crosses his mind. One of the most powerful dragon species in existence is completely at his mercy. No one in Berk had ever even seen a Night Fury up close before. For the first time in his life, Hiccup held absolute power over something that had terrorized his people for generations. Killing Toothless may earn him some glory, but Hiccup makes a calculated decision. What if he could keep the Night Fury trapped, using the dragon's injured tail fin as leverage? Hiccup would then have the most powerful weapon the Vikings had ever known, an actual dragon under his control. But this wasn't going to be a partnership, it was enslavement with extra steps. Hiccup fashions the prosthetic tail fin with a mechanism designed so that only Hiccup can operate it, making Toothless completely dependent on his captor for flight. Without trust and mutual respect, their bond becomes one of necessity rather than friendship. When Hiccup returns to dragon training, he approaches it with a newfound arrogance. He has a Night Fury under his control, so dominating the other dragons should pose no challenge. Just like in the original movie, he tames dragons using novel techniques, but this time, he's developing new weapons on the side as well. Hiccup doesn't shy away from using force or chemical weapons when necessary. During the final confrontation with the Red Death, the corrupted dynamic between Hiccup and Toothless is evident. Their coordination is mechanical, lacking the fluid partnership that has made them unstoppable in the original timeline. However, Hiccup still manages to defeat the Red Death by methodically wearing down the larger dragon. Over the following years, this master-slave relationship spreads to Berk's entire dragon program, becoming a system of control rather than cooperation. When Drago Bloodfist emerges with his army, Hiccup loses his controlled dragons to the Bewilderbeast's influence. They have no emotional investment in their captors, and the Alpha's call offers them something Hiccup never did, a purpose behind servitude. Because their bond was never genuine, Toothless lacks the strength of will to break free from the Bewilderbeast's control like he did in the original timeline. The enslaved Night Fury becomes just another weapon in Drago's arsenal, with no inner fire of friendship to burn away the Alpha's influence. But the saddest part of the story is Hiccup's encounter with Valka. Relief washes over him as he learns his mother is still alive, but Valka pushes her son away, disgusted by the cruel Viking that he has become. Valka attempts to keep Toothless at her sanctuary, but once again, the Night Fury's reliance on Hiccup forces Toothless to stay by his master's side. When Drago lands on Berk, the battle slowly becomes a massacre, and the Vikings fall quickly to the warlord's overwhelming force. Stoic dies not from saving his son from a misguided friend, but watching that son reap the consequences of his own cruelty. Our second timeline begins the same way, with Hiccup enslaving Toothless using the dragon's injury as leverage, but here, the story takes a different turn when they face Drago's Bewilderbeast. Initially, events unfold similarly to the first timeline. Toothless falls under the Alpha's control and turns against Hiccup. But in this version, something deep within the Night Fury, perhaps the spark of defiance that made him survive so long as the last of his kind, rebels against his new form of control. Toothless breaks free from the Bewilderbeast's influence through sheer force of will, but not out of love for Hiccup. Instead, it's pure rage. Rage at being controlled, rage at being used, rage at having his freedom stripped away first by Hiccup and now by Drago. When Toothless challenges the Bewilderbeast, he doesn't fight for Berk or for the humans, he fights for the liberation of all dragons to choose their own fate, and takes down the rival Alpha with a plasma blast that carries years of suppressed fury. Toothless still relies on Hiccup for flight, but something has changed now that he commands absolute loyalty from all dragons. The balance of power seems to have shifted, and Hiccup sees a glint of defiance in the Night Fury's eyes. He realizes he created something far more dangerous than Drago, an alpha dragon with a deep hatred of human control and the power to act on it. The tension builds as Hiccup desperately tries to maintain Berk's dragon program, but every day comes with a new challenge and a new act of rebellion from the dragons. In this timeline, Grimmel the Grizzly still emerges as a threat to fulfill his objective of exterminating the Night Furies. During reconnaissance, he sees that Toothless's hatred of human control makes him predictable, and predictable opponents can be trapped. Just like in the original timeline, Grimmel doesn't try to capture Toothless through force. He manipulates the Alpha into a trap using the Light Fury, and keeps him in check by threatening the dragons under his protection. In the end, Grimmel succeeds in killing Toothless using his Death Grippers. The dragons lose their Alpha, and Night Furies have been well and truly exterminated. The Dragons of Berk retaliate with all their fury, ignoring the Dragon Riders' pleas and rushing at Grimmel's armada. They manage to take out the brutal dragon hunter, but not without casualties. It is at this point that Hiccup realizes the error of his ways and begins wondering how he can make amends for what he's done. He realizes that the way he treated dragons was wrong all along, and that the world will always be filled with others like him. In this timeline as well, Hiccup decides to return the dragons to the hidden world, but this decision did not come from a place of compassion. It came from an understanding that any attempts to tame dragons and harness them as weapons will only end in more death and destruction. Hiccup's corruption of his first dragon partnership ultimately cost both species their chance at true coexistence. Regardless, his search for the hidden world begins, hopeful to find a home for dragonkind outside humanity's reach. But now for the darkest timeline. Hiccup's encounter with Toothless in the forest ends exactly as Berk would expect, with a dead dragon and a triumphant Viking. Just like in the original timeline, Hiccup takes down Toothless with a bola launcher, leaving the Night Fury tangled and helpless in the forest. Hiccup discovers Toothless just like in the original timeline, but this time he's prepared to get his hands dirty. Hiccup drives his knife deep into the Night Fury's heart, ending Toothless's life before their bond can even begin. A feeling of pride rushes over Hiccup, and he can barely contain his nervous energy. He's finally proven himself as a dragon slayer, and visions of the Vikings congratulating him pass through his mind. Hiccup returns to Berk with Toothless's head as a trophy. Stoic is mightily impressed, and for the first time in his life, he feels like Hiccup will finally be a true Viking. Meanwhile, Gobber cannot stop congratulating Hiccup, while Astrid watches on in secret admiration. The validation Hiccup's craved his entire life makes him hungry for more, and he embraces the art of dragon hunting. However, Hiccup's approach to dragon training remains mostly similar to the original timeline. Realizing his limitations with normal weapons, Hiccup studies dragon anatomy to find their weaknesses. His innovative mind, instead of creating solutions for coexistence, develops increasingly efficient methods of dragon extermination. The final exam against the monstrous nightmare becomes a public execution. Hiccup lulls the dragon into a false sense of security before systematically exploiting its behavioral patterns to deliver a killing blow with cold precision. Because the Vikings of Berk never train and begin riding dragons in this timeline, the Red Death will no longer emerge as a major threat. However, Hiccup notices the strange and erratic behavior of the dragons at times. He eventually discovers the Red Death's island and considers the massive dragon yet another hurdle he needs to cross. The battle against the Red Death becomes a massacre. Without the option of dragon allies, Berk's Vikings must face the massive creature with sheer brutality in numbers. Many die, but Hiccup's ruthless tactics eventually succeed in bringing down the queen. Standing over the Red Death's corpse, Hiccup has become everything Berk wanted, a perfect dragon killer. When Drago Bloodfist emerges with his Bewilderbeast, he faces a different opponent. This Hiccup doesn't try to understand or communicate with dragons. He simply develops better ways to kill them en masse. The conflict with Drago is ridiculously imbalanced, though. Due to the dragons that are part of his forces, the war devastates the entirety of Berk, and Stoic dies at Drago's hands. The main drawback of this timeline is that Hiccup has no way to travel through the skies. This means he would probably never even encounter Volca at her sanctuary, maintaining the misguided belief that she was killed by dragons. By the time Grimmel the Grizzly appears, there are few dragons left to hunt. The master dragon hunter finds himself in the strange position of meeting his philosophical equal in Hiccup. Both men dedicated their lives to dragon extermination and succeeded beyond their wildest expectations. Hiccup becomes one of the greatest dragon slayers in history, earning respect and fear from every Viking tribe. But as he surveys his empty accomplishments, surrounded by a world stripped of wonder and reduced to pure survival, Hiccup finally understands what he lost. And that brings an end to the final timeline. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss out on more incredible content from the How to Train Your Dragon universe.